Hello and welcome to Within the Frame. I'm Han Da-eun in Seoul. The 2024 KBO regular season has wrapped up, drawing over 10 million fans from across the country. The postseason kicked off this week with the top 5 teams from the regular season competing for the championship. In fact, the wildcard series is now complete and the postseason is already down to 4 teams, with KT Wiz eliminating Doosan Bears on Thursday. Meanwhile, the controversy rages on about the selection process for Korea's national football head coach, with the sports ministry taking aim at the Korea Football Association. For some updates and insights into the latest buzz in sports, we have sportscaster Jason Lee joining us in the studio. It's been a while. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Good to be here again.
And also with us tonight is Yoo Jee-ho, sports writer at Yonhap News Agency. It's always great to have you with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jason, let's kick things off with you. First of all, what's your overall assessment of this year's regular season?
The regular season in the KBO was fantastic from a lot of different angles. And the first one to mention, of course, is from an attendance standpoint, as they broke the all-time attendance record, which was about 8.4 million back in 2017. But this year, they had over 10 million. In fact, they were pretty close to reaching 11 million. So the success and the attention of the season was outstanding, but also the play on the field. All sorts of records were broken this year, and I think this year will be remembered for the year that many different records fell. Looking back on, of course, Kim Do-young, the third baseman for the Kia Tigers, he went on to become the youngest player ever to complete a 30-30 season of 30 home runs and 30 steals, also while being in the top 5 in batting average. So at 20 years of age, he's really broken out as a potential future star, and I'm sure he's going to receive a lot of attention from Major League Baseball. That was the biggest breakout of the season, but also, as mentioned, a lot of records fell. Choi Jung became the all-time home run leader in the KBO. Yang Hyun-jung of the Kia Tigers became the all-time strikeout leader in the KBO, and also Son Ah-sup became the all-time hits leader in the KBO. So all sorts of different records falling. Also, Victor Reyes became the all-time single-season hits record with 202. So there's been a lot of attention this season, and certainly a lot of reason for it as well.
So we had a lot of record breakers this season, and we saw another one just yesterday. The 2024 KBO postseason is already down to 4 teams, as I mentioned at the top, with KT Wiz knocking out Doosan Bears. This is also quite a historic upset, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because they've had the wildcard system in place since 2015, and this year was the first time ever that the wildcard, the underdog team, actually went on to knock off the 4th best team from the regular season. So how the playoff system works in Korea is essentially the 5th place team plays the 4th place team and has to win 2 games in a row. So even just 1 win for the 4th place team, or even a tie, would advance them to the next round. But it's the first time that that 5th place team has won 2 straight games to move on to the next round of the playoffs. So KT advances, where they'll play a 5-game series with the LG Twins. The winner of that will meet the 2nd place Samsung Lions, and the winner of that series moves on to the Korean series, where the Kia Tigers are awaiting.
Now, Jee-ho, what are the key watch points in this postseason, and which team do you predict will likely come out on top?
Yeah, so we've mentioned it's down to 4 teams now, and the KT Wiz versus the LG Twins to begin the next phase tomorrow afternoon at Jeongju Baseball Stadium in Seoul. And this is the rematch of the Korean series from last year. The Twins won the series in 5 games for their first title since 1994. But even though they only needed 5 games to win the best-of-7 series, that series was a lot closer than it looked. The first 3 games were decided by a run each. The Wiz won the first game on the road. They were leading the second game in late innings before giving up a home run in the 8th inning. And also in Game 3, they were also up by 2 runs in the 9th inning, down to the final out, and gave up a 3-run home run to lose by a run And then I guess the rest of it was the history for the Twins in the favor of Twins. So it's a rematch of the championship final from last year. They're meeting a little bit earlier than they would have preferred, I would imagine. But the winner goes on to meet, as Jason said, the number 2 seed Samsung Lions, who are back in the postseason after not making it last year. I don't think a lot of pundits, I guess including myself, really expected them to get this far in the postseason. But here they are, second best record from the regular season. Their fan base really came out in big numbers. They drew a lot. They set their franchise record for fans in a season. Also sold out a whole bunch of games down in Daegu. So I'm sure the fans are really excited for their postseason, some meaningful baseball at this time of year for the first time in quite a while. But I was thinking at this point that Kia Tigers would have to be the favorite to win the title. They have won 11 championships so far. That's more than anybody in KBO history. And also, they've never lost in the Korean series. They're 11 for 11 in the previous trips to the Korean series. And also the fact that, they've got to bye to the final. They're going to have about, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks off to kind of rest their bodies to get ready for their championship series, whereas their opponents will have played at least a few high-intensity, high-stress playoff games to get there. So they're going to have the rest advantage on their side, the Tigers will. And if you look at the history of the Korean series, number 1 seed has won the title about 85% of the time. So I guess the odds are in the Tigers' favor as well. They've had the best offense in the league so far, I guess in the regular season. They've had some injuries with the pitchers, but they can always outscore their problems. Their pitchers can go out and give up 5 runs. Their batters can go out and score 6 or 7 runs to win those games. So it's going to be, I think, very tough to beat the Tigers in the Korean series.
So Kia Tigers will likely come out on top. Well, it's unarguably one of Korea's most popular baseball teams, isn't it? If not the most popular. Now, Jason, as you mentioned, this year's professional baseball season attracted over 10 million spectators, breaking the 10 million mark for the first time in history. What do you think led to this significant milestone? What factors?
I think there's really a perfect storm of a bunch of factors. I think first and foremost, Korea putting COVID-19 in the rearview mirror has really helped out. The previous year, the KBO only drew 6 million and change. So to be able to jump that by 4 million, obviously COVID was a factor the year before. But the fact that that's kind of in the rearview mirror now, I think really helps. I think the biggest factor was the fact that Kia as well as Samsung were 2 of the top teams all season long. As Gio mentioned, Samsung broke attendance records. But one thing that does with Kia being in Gwangju as well as Samsung being in Daegu, those are teams that are outside of the capital region. And everyone says that, everyone lives in Seoul, but nobody's from Seoul. So whenever those teams would play in Jamsil or some of the other Seoul vicinity stadiums, you're going to have people in the capital region that go to support Samsung as a road team or that go to support Kia as a road team. So I think those were things that helped out as well. Perhaps if Lotte was a top 3 team this season, then attendance figures might have been even higher, but obviously that didn't happen this year. But certainly that helped. The big story this year also was the attendance by female fans. So I think there's been a lot of talk lately that females have been enjoying the game, that they've been enjoying the cheering portion of the game. And I think the media talking about that, numbers being up early on in the season, I think it really helped to bring attention to the fact. And there were probably female fans that didn't attend for the first time, let's say in April or May, but then decided to go out because they saw the media covering it, talking about it that way. And I think it really boosted those numbers even into the summer months, which typically can be hotter, wetter, and maybe just not as enjoyable from a climate standpoint, but people still went out to enjoy the games. And I think there were many different factors with that. They had new rules this season as well that people may have been curious about. As mentioned, there were records being broken, so people wanted to be there to perhaps catch a record baseball or to be able to see a historic moment. So a lot of different factors, and in the end, it was just a great season altogether.
Jee-ho, anything to add to this? What do you think contributed to this explosive popularity of baseball this year?
Yeah, I think the product on the field was pretty good also this year, and especially on the offensive end. If you look at some of the numbers, we've had the best offensive numbers since 2018. The official baseball might have been juiced once again for this year, but that's a whole another discussion. But if you look at some of the numbers, the batting average went up from last year from 263 to 277 league-wide. Number of home runs, 924 last year, but 1,438 this year. So that's a big jump from year to year. We had our first 40 homer guy in 4 years with the May Davison of the NC Daniels, a whole bunch of other players hitting 30-plus homers. That hadn't been the case in the last couple of years. So a lot more home runs, a lot more action, more fireworks, figuratively speaking anyway, on the field. So obviously more offense is always more fun, especially to casual fans trying to get into baseball for the first time. Obviously, I guess the people who identify themselves as purists might prefer some pitching deals, 1-0 games and 2-1 games and whatnot. But if you're just casual fans going out there for the first time, for the second time or whatnot, you'd like to see some runs being scored. You'd like to see some balls leaving the park. And there's not a lot of things in baseball quite as exciting as a home run being hit. So we've had a lot of home runs this year. I guess just the overall product in the field has been really good compared to the last couple of years.
Meanwhile, Jason, Major League Baseball in the U.S. has also wrapped up its regular season and moved into the postseason. How did Korean big leaguers fare this year?
I wish I could say that it was a great year for Koreans in Major League Baseball. Unfortunately, there were actually a lot of injuries that kind of limited Korean production when it came to their performance in Major League Baseball. I think the first one to talk about is Lee Jung-hoo, who was making his debut season with the San Francisco Giants. He played just over a month and then separated his shoulder and needed season-ending surgery. So his season was cut short. A lot of people were really looking for him to be the next ambassador for Korea in Major League Baseball. So it was frustrating to see his season get cut short. And not only him, but a guy that really made a name for himself last season was Ha-sung Kim of the San Diego Padres. He went on to win a Gold Glove as the best utility defender last season. So he was another guy that we were looking for great things out of this season. And I think he had a solid season as well, perhaps not as good as last year. But once again, like Lee Jung-hoo, his season was cut short due to injury, and he needed season-ending surgery as well. His team is actually in the postseason, about to play the LA Dodgers. So the fact that his team is still going, but he could have been there if he wasn't injured, certainly shining a spotlight on him. It's a little bit frustrating to see. Having said that, though, he is going to be a free agent after this season, and after putting up, back-to-back solid seasons, and like I said, a Gold Glove performance the year before, and being known as a complete player, I think the thing to look forward to this offseason is how he does in free agency. He does have a mutual option with his team, so if he and the team both agree, well, we can, do a one more year of $7 million as his contract. I think there's no way that that's going to happen, because I think he can at least double that, perhaps in the offseason, with maybe like a 5 to 10-year contract. The way that he's been playing and the way that defense is viewed at the shortstop position. So I would look for Ha-sung Kim or Kim Ha-sung to perhaps get a big contract. And then the one more thing that I would say is in the offseason, not to be confused, Hae-sung Kim of the Kium Heroes, who was actually a former teammate of all the guys that I just talked about. He should be making his way over to Major League Baseball this offseason as well. He's actually hired the same agency that represents Shohei Otani. So it's looking that, he's available to make the move to Major League Baseball, and it looks like he's got good representation, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And one last sleeper of a person to look at in the offseason, I think, is going to be Kang Baek-ho of the KT Wiz. He is eligible eligible to move over to Major League this season. No one has really talked about this in the Korean media. And interestingly enough, he's typically a first baseman, corner outfielder, but this season he'd actually been playing catcher, which is much more valuable defensively to a team. So maybe he gains more value as a catcher and perhaps is able to go over to Major League Baseball. He hasn't spoken about it. No one's covered it. Maybe he's not interested in going. I don't know. But that could be perhaps a dark horse story to look for in the offseason.
And staying in the U.S., LA Dodgers superstar Shohei Otani has reached history as a member of the 50-50 club, hitting 50 home runs and stealing 50 bases in a single season. Jee-ho, how significant is this?
Yeah, he just put up video game numbers, 54 homers and 59 steals, and became the charter member of a 50-50 club. And he did it in a game in which he went 6 for 6 with 3 homers, 2 doubles, 2 steals, and 10 RBIs. And first time in MLB history that a player had 3 homers and multiple steals in the same game. It was being talked about, it has been talked about as potentially the greatest single game ever in the history of Major League Baseball. And again, just mind-boggling numbers that he put up. I'm not sure if anybody can repeat these feat, even Otani himself. He had been a two-way player until this year. He was pitching, and also he was, when he was not starting for his previous team, LA Angels, he was a designated hitter for them. So he had been doing 2 things, and that takes a lot out of you. But this year, because he was recovering from an elbow surgery, he'd only focused on hitting. And he figured, you know what, I got some extra time on my hand. I got to figure out how to steal bases better. So he'd always had the speed, but you need more than just the speed to be able to steal bases. You've got to be able to study different pitchers' habits, get the timing down. And he really worked on that aspect of his game this past offseason. So he was able to really put up big numbers in the steals department and ended up with 59. But most likely he's going to be back pitching next year. So I'm not sure if he's going to risk any injuries trying to steal bases. So my guess is he's not going to be able to match 50-50, or I guess even for them, anybody else, I don't know if anybody else will do it in MLB going forward. So first year with the Dodgers, after signing the mega contract, 10 years and $700 million, he obviously is worth every penny of their money that is getting paid. So just the historic season for Otani. And also he's playing in the postseason for the first time in his career. So that's a big moment for him personally, trying to win a championship for the first time in his career.
Now, moving on to the controversy surrounding the selection process of national football head coaches here in Korea. The sports ministry has announced that the Korea Football Association repeatedly violated internal regulations when hiring both Hong Myung-bo and his predecessor, Jurgen Klinsmann. Tell us more about the interim results of the ministry's audit, Jee-ho, and how the KFA is responding.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack. I was at I covered that ministry's announcement of the interim results of the probe and went on for close to an hour. So there's a lot to unpack. I don't know if you have enough time to get into all the details. But the gist is the ministry has found that the KFA did not follow proper procedures to hire those 2 coaches you mentioned. But now Jurgen Klinsmann has been already fired. So I don't know if we really need to get into that aspect of the process. But with Hong Myung-bo, who was hired back in July, the ministry said KFA's technical director, Lee Im-sang, went ahead with interviewing candidates and ultimately recommending Hong for the approval by the board of directors when he did not have that authority to do it. So the KFA has countered that basically a lot of these points from the ministry came from their serious lack of understanding about the inner workings of the KFA. The KFA also said there are some instances where there are just no rules to break in the first place because some of the things have, they did some of those things because that's the way things have been done all along, pretty much by conventions of their customs. So, basically KFA has told the ministry that, hey, this is how we do things around here. You don't have any idea what's going on. So you can't really be criticizing us for breaking rules when we just follow the rules that we've been following all these years. So, there's potentially not a lot of, there's probably not an end to this saga anytime soon. The ministry is scheduled to announce the final findings later this month and also likely recommend some sort of disciplinary measures for certain figures involved in this controversy. But I don't think they can really force the KFA to do anything about this situation.
The controversy will likely rage on, but we do have an important game coming up. South Korea is set to face Jordan next week in the third round of Asian World Cup qualifiers. But Captain Son Heung-min, has been ruled out due to injury. What impact would this have?
Honestly, this is huge, and this is very fresh news, by the way. We just discovered this a couple of hours ago that Son Heung-min will not be playing in the next two games for Korea, as mentioned, against Jordan, and then also the following week against Iraq as well. And Korea is currently tied with Iraq and Jordan, those two teams, with 4 points in the standings. Technically, if you want to get technical about it, Korea's second, based on tiebreakers. But this is very important two games for Korea. So the fact that they're missing not only their captain, but their most talented, accomplished player, as well as a team leader, is going to be very, very big. He suffered a hamstring injury a couple of games ago, and he's actually missed his last two games for his club team, Tottenham, in the English Premier League. So I get it. It's, it is what it is in terms of his health is more important long term. Certainly, Team Korea is not paying his checks the way that Tottenham is, so they don't really have the authority perhaps to play him if his club team is not playing him as much, and he has not played recently, and I don't think he's expected to be playing this coming weekend as well. So it seems like it was the right thing to do, but certainly with a couple of very important games coming up, this is a terrible loss for Team Korea.
Now, compared to the roster from the September games, several players have been replaced. What are your expectations for the performance of the newly added players?
Yeah, now with Son Heung-min missing, there's 6 different players that played, that were on the roster for their last game against Oman that are not on the initial 26-man selection process going into these next two games. I will note, however, that other than Son Heung-min, all the other players who started against Oman are in the lineup or are on the initial roster. So it's not, sweeping changes. It's to the substitutes that have seen the biggest change. The most notable, I would say, is Yang Min-hyuk, the youngster playing in Gangwon that is expected to be transferred to the EPL next season. He has been left off. But once again, I think this is a game that Korea and fans need to be a little bit concerned about. As mentioned, missing Son Heung-min, and let's remember that Jordan is a team that defeated Korea in the Asian Cup championship. So they went on to the finals while Korea was eliminated early. So this is not a team that is going to be a pushover. They're tied with them going into this for 4 points. So I would say I'm absolutely concerned as to what the result is going to be. Long term, however, Korea should eventually qualify for the World Cup, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are, some interesting headlines after their next game.
All right, we'll leave our discussion there, but we'll be sure to keep our fixed on the upcoming games. Korea's match against Jordan will be held at 11 p.m. on Thursday, Korea time, so don't miss it. Thank you, Jason, for sharing your perspectives with us.
Pleasure as always.
And many thanks to you as well, Yoo-Jee-ho, for sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's all from our team here. Thank you for watching. Before we let you go, we'd like to inform you about a few upcoming changes. Within the Frame, we'll continue to bring you in-depth analyses on pressing issues and interesting topics. But starting next week, it'll air at a new time, weekdays from 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Korea time. Arirang anchor Kim Mo-gyun will be taking over as the new host starting next week. Well, that's all from me. It has been a privilege to guide you through a diverse range of discussions. Thank you and goodbye.